Alrighty, macro perspective peeps. Welcome back to what's going to be another great episode here with Astrid, the Fit Dietitian. One of the episodes that has been in our lost archive for a while. And Seamus and I were discussing recently, like, man, what are some of the episodes that got away from us that we need to go back to? And Seamus is like, you know what, F it, I'm just going to send her a message and at least. What's the worst thing that happened? She says no. And she decided, yes, I'll come back on and give an episode now that internet is going to be seamless for all of us because we're definitely not in the same part of the world. So Astrid, I'm going to let you go ahead and do a little intro for us here. And thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. The pleasure is mine. And I don't know what you want to know about me, but basically my story is very simple. I came from South America. I moved to Australia now it's not 11 years ago. That's the story I always tell, but now I think it is 12 or 13 years. I don't even remember. But I've been here for a while. I've been a dietitian since 2012, and since then all this time I've been working in the area of improving people's nutrition, improving people's quality of life through making a small sustainable changes in their lives. I've done different areas, if you want to say it that way, within the nutrition realm. So I started as a clinical dietitian, and I continue to be as a clinical dietitian working on a rehab setting and a bariatric and mental health setting. So that is a scope that I really enjoy doing, and mostly full-time online coach as well with Team BioLane and Lane Norton. So I've been working with them for about probably 3.5, 4 years now with them. And I think I'm the oldest coach so far that's been in the company with them for so long. And I love what I do for my clients. There's like a different wide range of people that I work with around relationship with food, emotional eating, overweight, but coming from a yo-yo dieting and having lots of different challenges with their relationship with food, body image. And so it's this complex case of people that we get that have a really interesting history with dieting and their body, and how can we just move and change this information and completely transform their lives.
Yeah. I love that. Go ahead, Marcos.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to that, so you've been a member of the team for going on like 4 years now. How has that been an influence on your coaching style as being a part of that team, or has it always been kind of a very similar approach since you have been a dietitian for going on 13 years now?
I think it's always changed as I continue to learn in my journey, not just from my own clients and my own experience, but how to communicate better. Nutrition is evolving all the time, so it's always like something that I'm continuing to do all the time, and like in this continued process of professional development that I am always seeking for. So I think my style hasn't changed as much, but it's definitely gotten more patient, client centered, and is always at negotiation, that communication, always looking at trying to do the best I can to make sure that the client is getting to where they need to go, and trying to connect with them where they are at. So I don't try to push them to do something that they're not ready to do, or they don't have the capacity or the level to start doing that at that level. So I'm trying to level them up and see where they are. I meet them when they are, and then we move from there.
That's something that me and Seamus have been diving into since getting board certified in health coaching. And it was very eye-opening to both of us, like, because we coached a lot of X's and O's for, going on the last decade now, but to really kind of almost learn that process as well the last couple of years, to understand, like, we always felt like, Seamus, right? We always felt like we were good at meeting our clients where they're at and trying to educate them about the next steps and shining the lights, but to like be coached about, like, again, being better with open-ended questions and motivational interviewing people and all those things, like you said, that professional development like element, like I didn't realize how much I needed it. I thought like coaching people is going to be easy from now on, but I feel like it's just gotten harder and harder because there's more complex cases.
I agree. And also too, I think one thing I've learned, just because we're also coaches, like we're trying to get a result. That's what the person is paying us for, especially like in the online coaching world, right? First off, you have this person that's maybe across the world paying you money, and they're asking you to give them a result in a time frame, whether it's like getting a wedding or a birthday or I don't know, something, right? And it's like, I'm paying you this money, so better get me the result. So on your end as a coach, you're probably, and Astrid as a dietitian, like you're probably like, okay, like this is what we need to do. I know the plan. This is the X's and O's. But then you meet the person, you do their health intake, you get a feel for their personality, where they're at mentally, and you go, this is where the person is at right now. And I think the one thing I've learned from that board certification too, that 18-month process, Marcos, was caring less, not necessarily being not caring, just being able to care a little bit less and being a little bit able to step back objectively and meet the person where they're at, but then be able to go, I don't have to be stressed or anxious in this situation to get the person to the next steps, because actually all the onus is all on that person. I'm just here reflecting back what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it is important to understand you can't make them do things that they're not ready to do. And when you meet them where they are, you understand that sometimes they have a goal, but in order for them to reach that goal, they have to, it's like a Nintendo game. You have to step on certain levels and acquire certain skills and solve certain foundational issues that if they're not resolved at that level, they're going to continue to keep you stuck from evolving to the next level. Because anything that is going to affect the way you approach certain things, the way your mindset is, and the way certain habits in your lifestyle are, something will backlash and get you stuck back again, or make you certainly go a little bit closer to the next level, but it's going to pull you back.
It's like, I mean, that's a great analogy. I actually already clipped that because I'm like, oh, there's levels to this. We always say that, right, Seamus? There's levels to this shit when you're diving into health and wellness and journeying into people's mind. And I know you mentioned like the psychological piece, which I think we're going to tap into that right now. Like, how do we know when someone's mind is ready to move on to the next level? How are you coaching people to, like, you know, kind of make that assessment as their coach to, you know, put more on their plate, whether it's habit related or, you know, maybe further into a deficit, or, you know, more on their plate from an activity standpoint? Or I don't know if you're also dealing with their actual training program as well, like what that all looks like.
It's a very simple answer. How well and how consistent are they being with the basics? And if they're performing that at a level that there's no doubt that they're doing it the right thing consistently, and you can see the compliance and there's progress with it, then you know that you can add more to it. And it's basically that simple. Like, how well and how consistent are they being just implementing the first basic steps? And the second thing is the conversation you have with them and listening to what they have to say, how they feel, and what are their aspirations, what are the roadblocks, what the things that they are experiencing at that moment in time. And if everything looks like they are ready to step up the game, when it comes to training, whether they are ready to increase their weight, their loads, progressive overload, whether we need to increase intensity or make or add an exercise that is probably a little bit more complex, or when it comes to nutrition, are we ready to go to decrease the calories a little bit more if we need to get further along the journey? When it comes to mindset, are they no longer responding with impulses to or urges to eating? Are they being intentional, mindful? Do they feel in control? Are they able to do their nutrition and planning on time every week, so they are not missing out on their protein, on their nutrition, or the calories? It comes back to this simple statement: they are being consistent across the board with the basics. If that is like a mastered level, then they can go to the next level.
I love that. I have like two thoughts on this, Marcos, real quick. One thought is, first, I feel like I need to coach people better on just tracking. I think there's sometimes a big resistance to tracking with some populations. Some people are like, oh, this is so tedious. It's so hard. Marcos and I were talking about this. I wish there were just glasses that just knew my calories as I looked at the food when it came in.
Well, I mean, let's put this is where we need to get eventually a good editor, dude. So we can be like, hey, go to the episode right here where we're talking about this exact idea. Because you know, that was the previous episode, right? We're talking about like Astrid, if people are trying to share their journals with you, right? We're going on what they're assuming. But as a coach, like we were talking yesterday about AI and how people will be wearing like Ray-Ban glasses that will capture every time they're eating. So there's no lying to your coach anymore when it comes to that. Like you can go back and actually look, hey, you did a really good job of putting the estimations or the weight of the food into there, or your estimated guesses. Actually, that's probably exactly how I would have done it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what you're alluding to, right, Seamus? Is the
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to. And
thought?
then,
Yeah.
yeah, and then my second kind of thought, Astrid, is let's say someone is doing everything really well and stuff like that, and you have that conversation. Pushing them sometimes is like trying to create like a new frontier, and it's like creating like a new identity. Let's just say someone is doing everything consistently on the tracking, the metrics, and everything like that, but mindset wise, not ready. Like they may not be ready for that next step. How do you still push them? Because let's say they're not getting to their goal and like it's a timely goal and like, yeah, they're paying you, you know. How do you have that crucial, realistic conversation and letting them know, like, hey, you know, your data looks good, everything looks good, you've been doing well in the program. Like, do we just want to sit here? Like, how does that conversation kind of go for you? Because I feel I have that conversation consistently where things are looking good for people, but they're just not ready for that next push sometimes.
It comes back to how important their goals are, and that end goal, is it what you really, really want? Or maybe you can reconsider and that is no longer a big goal for you. And if it doesn't mean, and if it's not worth the suffering or the push to do that extra, you don't have to. It's like when I did my prep, I literally could have just stopped in the middle of my prep when I was so confronted by just being back on my issues and my history of eating disorder, because that was one of the things that I was going to experiment again. And I said to myself, if you get to a point where there is a big risk of going backwards, I'll stop, or I'll see what I need to do in order for that to not happen. But I reassessed my values, and it was like a conversation that I had with myself around me having that promise to myself that I also wanted to do something that pushed me to the next level in many, many areas.
Yeah.
Not just for the physique component, but like we can do hard things. And I've always wanted to see how far and how capable am I to just have that integrity of doing the fuck that I said that I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I can just give up. I'm not a quitter. So that gave me so much resilience and said, like, told me you have to keep going. And the same thing is that conversation that I have with my clients. Like, is it something that really means to you a lot? Like, do you need to really lose that 20 pounds? Or maybe where you're at, you're happy with it, and that's why you get a little bit complacent in that sense that you may not feel like you need to push any longer. But then in the conversation, we start like digging into their pain points and what has been holding them back, and then what would it look like to be at the goal that they initially wanted to be. And somehow that spark comes back, and like, yes, you're right, I need to do this for myself, I need to do this for my kids, I need to do this for, like, looking at the true whys. What is truly moving you? It's not just aesthetics, because just for the aesthetics, sometimes it is hard to, perhaps what stops us is visualizing ourselves being there in that goal, because most people that work with you have never been that lean before, or maybe they have never achieved that for a long time, so they don't believe in themselves, they don't believe that they can achieve that. When I started my prep, and I think that's something that I loved about my first prep and my journey, is that I can always make some really strong associations with my clients' journeys. Because when I started, I had no way that I could visualize myself on stage. I couldn't even see myself. Everything was blurry because, one, I had never been on a stage before. I had never been that lean. I always was wanting to get there, but I had no idea what it would take to get there. So when I was starting my prep, it was really hard to visualize that. So I was just needing to trust the process and to just fucking show up every day, even if I didn't see it instantly. and same with posing, and same with different habits that I had to implement. So these all translate exactly the same when it comes to working with your clients. My clients probably have never seen the scale below a certain number for years. And then suddenly, after months of work together and consistency and not being 100% perfect, but just doing the right thing, the next best thing, they get to see those numbers and they can't even believe it.
Yeah.
I generally tend to work with clients over 6 months. I never work under 16 weeks because it doesn't work. Like it's really hard to achieve something sustainable and permanent in less than that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. That's an amazing answer right there. Honestly, that was like a really true answer because it's managing the person's goals and expectations and reality in terms of like what they're inputting, but then it's their identity is being pushed with their behavior. Like, oh, do you really want this? And you realize it's not the aesthetic, it's your lifestyle, it's who you want to be. And can you actually say, I'm going to say that thing and I'm going to make that thing an actual thing in reality? And when you realize if you can't make something in reality, you go, oh shit, like I may not be that person, or I have to prove to myself I can be that person. That's a really deep answer.
Yeah,
It
and
is.
I think with you mentioning kind of the journey and prep too, like, and then also you kind of opening up about potential eating disorders that could kind of rear their ugly heads again too. Like, I mean, that's a difficult kind of thing to navigate, and I definitely feel like in my Seamus and myself's like kind of clinical role where we're having access to some newer technologies and medications for people, and then also then having people talk about that kind of like where they're at or what they came from or how they view food as part of like our initial evaluation. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things to like really consider, and how managing people's expectations, and then could this be something that's possibly like triggering them to feel as if that behavior is resurfacing. And then also too, like you mentioned, like prep and getting that lean, then you got to come out of it because you don't stay that lean. And then I'd like to hear if you can kind of discuss that, like coming out of that diet in that depleted state and then being on stage, and then what food looked like and the journey of like, how'd you navigate that? Like how was the reverse diet? Like how long did you give yourself to try to kind of stay where you could be pretty lean and take some photos and kind of enjoy that, visual image versus where did you end up kind of maintaining afterwards?
That was one of the most interesting and hardest things I've ever done for different reasons. One is really hard to let go of that physique that you see on stage because it's just so amazing how you feel, how you feel looking at it.
Yeah.
That's the difference. You
That's
feel
why
like
we
shit.
love our glory days.
You feel like shit. Let me just tell you, like that stage of being so lean, aesthetically you look amazing, but you feel like death, like real shit. You have no energy. You're so hungry, tired, always thinking about food, just not wanting to do anything naturally just because you don't have the energy to do anything. I didn't even want to speak. I didn't even like my energy was so low that I was just like a robot. Literally, that was the way that I was acting. 3 days post show, I had somehow refeed myself, rested a little bit more. I felt like life came back to me. Like just being able to
You
eat
need like a
more.
week after, like you do your show, but you have to make sure from your job, like, hey, I still have a week vacation after because I'm coming back from death's door.
Not really. You're on all the time because
Oh,
there are levels to it. Like you don't have to be that intense for a week. You can just give yourself some rest.
yeah.
So like let's say the training is more like a deload week, but you still show up, you still go to the gym. It's part of what you are and who you are anyways. So it's
Yeah.
like to me not go to the gym is like I can't. I have to, that's part of
What
me.
about work? What about like your work? Like, did you have to like, hey, I need a few days after my prep to make sure like my mind is coming back to do the work I need to do?
Well, with it depends because I do different things. So with my hospital job, I have a role of as a clinical dietitian. I took for like 3 to 4 days off post show just to reduce some of the things that I do on my plate. But my coaching was normal. I was still coaching with my clients, and so that didn't change. But the other job did. So I kind of like did a deload of everything. Not
Yeah.
so much job, just the essentials of the one thing that I enjoy the most. I'm just gonna keep it. And with the training, I'm going to just maintain the basics. I'm just going to go and maybe not push myself too much. But I still did the same things. I still enjoyed doing the same exercises, same routine. And I was still showing up for that. My nutrition was the same foods that I was eating in prep. I was just eating more food. I was just allowing myself to have more flexibility. And I implemented something that I kind of coined a hybrid approach to reverse slash recovery diet, because I gave myself permission to bounce back a little bit faster, at least the first week, because I had a lot of the different aspects of biofeedback that were telling me you need to get out of this at least to a better stage of being much better overall. So I want to see how these markers of biofeedback actually start shifting to the right direction of health. So hunger, energy, mood, sleep, food focus, all of these things were on the extreme of the negative, or like you wouldn't see it like this is not good. So I wanted to give myself the time between 6 and 8 weeks to start looking at these numbers shifting to the right direction. So I could notice that as I implemented these strategies, I was giving myself permission to eat as much as I needed with a cap. So you can eat between this range, these lower calories and these calories, and I want you to reconnect with your inner cues and your hunger levels, because you have to retrain that again, because you've been dieting, you've been ignoring your hunger for so long that you don't really know anymore whether you're hungry or not, when you need to stop, when you need to start eating. So it's just recreating these internal cues that your body needs to retrain. So just giving myself permission to, like, if you're hungry, eat. If you're full, stop. If you know that you want to eat something very specific, you're craving something, just give yourself permission to eat it, as long as you are okay with it and it aligns with your recovery process. Do it. Like, I don't want binge episodes. I don't want to overindulge with anything. We still have to eat an adequate amount of protein. There were rules I put in place that allowed me a structured flexibility. So there were things that I was able to do that allowed me to see the movement on these not biomarkers, but more like the biofeedback. So I could see how my energy levels were coming up, my sleep was getting better, my food focus and my hunger levels were moving in that right direction. I wasn't hungry all the time, although that's a bit of a different point, because I'm always hungry. Even like before prep, my appetite is always been so high. But considering that a bit more normal, I was able to just get to that level of happiness, like happy medium.
Yeah. I got a few questions actually. So, like, tools that you use, I'm assuming you had a coach during the whole dieting process, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to, because it was the first prep. I just didn't want to put my brain into it. It's just always easier to work with a coach, and especially me knowing what a coach does for you. Fuck yeah, I don't need to have that all on my plate when I know that someone else can just have a different perspective, because you get on your head so much and you're so perfectionistic, and perhaps you can be more extreme in certain things and or not do it enough, or maybe you think you are doing enough and you get becoming complacent because you're seeing results, but maybe you're not at the pace that you should be, especially when you start thinking about your stage weight, and all the different things that you have to do in order to get there and become that person that you have to see on stage. I just didn't have a clue what being on stage looked like. So every time I see the scale dropping, like, okay, I'm feeling good. It's a really good day today. But I was so far away when I started. I had 13 kilos to drop. Like, it was very, very different. But every time I had a check-in, I was super confident. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm doing really well. And so there was a part of me that many times became complacent, and I wanted to have a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, or maybe just cheat on the diet today, because I felt like I'm doing really well. Why not? But when you have that person that keeps you accountable and has a different perspective, like, and they say, well, we're doing really well, but we actually need to drop the calories more. What?
Yeah, that's a
Oh man.
Well, it's a whole different piece. And well, that's why off season's so important. But before we go into that and what that looks like to get you prepped for, because you're about to start another prep, and I'm kind of curious to that process. And the other side of the coin, when you're like, oh, I have a little more body fat than I'm comfortable with to build additional muscle tissue, et cetera. You're mentioning biofeedback, and one of my coaches told me that I need to be better about is explaining things for people that might be new listeners and or people I'm talking to. And so everybody out there that's like, hey, these guys are maybe using some words that are unfamiliar to me. Biofeedback is what Astrid was saying, like your hunger, your things that are kind of subjective in a sense, and how you feel attached to them. Hunger, energy, rest, recovery, digestion, stress, and how all those different things are potentially making decisions for you. Astrid, Seamus and I have an old spreadsheet that I continue to use with clients. And you guys, do you use carbon for all of your clients that you work with when you're doing it, or do they pick their own thing, or what does that look like typically?
No, we use a different app that links with MyFitnessPal, and it has its own inbuilt tracker. I hate MyFitnessPal, if I'm honest. So if a client has carbon, I don't get mad from them using carbon, because as a tracker, just taking the coach and all of those algorithms is a super user-friendly app to track.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it. It got me to a photo shoot for 2 years straight.
Yeah, it is. It
Does
is
it have
great.
like a coaching back end, or is it just like it's closed in an app, or can like a coach look at my stuff if I hire them as a coach?
No. You have to get them send you screenshots and putting all the data on spreadsheets for you to see the numbers, but otherwise you can't truly get into their data. But to be honest, if you share with me a 3 days worth of screenshots of what you've been doing, I can have a very good grasp as to what your nutrition is looking like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I basically do that. And if you do have or use MyFitnessPal, I am always more vigilant as to pick up for errors, because a lot of people choose the wrong thing, or just the app is just so clunky. And so I hate it. I hate MyFitnessPal.
Just
You
so
have no
many
idea.
entries. There's so many
Yeah.
entries, and you just
You
selecting
have
the right
no idea.
one. And and that's part of it too, is like mentally, again, like combing through everybody's food log to like double check on it. Sometimes it's like, oh God, it's exhausting, or you miss something or whatever, only to then be like, you know what? If I tell this person to go to like 1100 and they're eating 1200 calories, right? It does feel low based on, with all the literature, but it's 100 calorie different from how they're tracking it. So sometimes you just have to push, you know what I mean, to whatever it is that they did and like their entry. But you're right, the cleanup phase, I'm trying to be more militant about that too, because I'm like, I want them to be able to understand and express that there's still a level of enjoyment with it, even if they are kind of in a deficit phase and dieting a little bit more. But I was curious that like if that was the case, because I was like, man, like, does it tie in, like Seamus asked, like on the back end for you guys as coaches for your guys' organization? But it sounds like it's more like a standalone kind of product on itself. It's making recommendations based off of things and how long until your goal date and stuff like that, versus, having a coach kind of see it. But the other thing too, like, okay, so diet has ended, you've been coached. I'm assuming they coached you on the reverse a little bit too, because coming out of that alone, having someone to report to have some guardrails is probably super freaking important as well. I could see myself. I got pretty lean going into my birthday last year, and actually my guardrail was my wife. She's like, you gotta put a little fat back on you. Your face looks gaunt. I was like, okay. I was trying to get stage ready, just for myself. The guardrails of the coach to get you back up there. And then the journey of going and reversing out it completely, and then going into like off season and building, because I'm assuming you're trying to come on stage with an even better version of yourself the second go around, right? What is that experience like? How does that, how does the thing between the ears actually respond to going the other direction?
I see it as hard as dieting, because it is a commitment to show up and train fucking hard and still like following a plan. It's not like a free for all. And I think having a very important structure and the commitment to improve certain areas of your physique that eventually you want them to show better next time you get lean. It's just like that commitment that you're doing the right thing. You're doing what you need to be doing every single day. And it is as hard as the dieting phase is, because you train so hard that you are still tired. You still get fatigued, you still get sore, and you still have a really good amount of volume that you need to cover, a really good amount of intensity, and you still go to perform the best, and you're showing up consistently. Your nutrition has to be on point, because you can't just eat whatever and a lot, because having or gaining too much body fat is actually not going to ensure that you're going to put on extra muscle. So there is plenty of research up until this point showing that you don't need a huge amount of surplus to achieve or develop a lot more muscle, unless you were someone who is truly resistant to gain muscle, or is genetically predisposed because their need is really high, or their own physiology is very sensible to calorie increase. So as they increase calorie intake, automatically they start increasing their needs without even realizing, and that's making them it just makes it harder for them to gain weight or put on muscle. Now, for the normal individual that has a normal need and has a shit genetics, you have to look and keep an eye on your diet really, really closely, because you can easily overdo it and put on weight really fast. And then, especially for me, that I'm planning to go back to a prep, I don't have the luxury to just put on a lot of weight, because then that makes it much harder for me to start the prep again. And when you do the calculations and the reverse engineers for the dates that I'm planning to compete, you wouldn't have that much time unless you become or get a lot more aggressive with your diet. So I just didn't want to do that anymore. The first time was almost 40 weeks of prep. This time is going to be half of the time, and I am way more conditioned. And I'm hoping and aiming to be even better and more conditioned this time, because I couldn't achieve that planned stage weight that my coach was telling me that I should achieve. I got close, but I didn't ever get to that specific weight. So probably that's where I'm going to be trying to aim this time. Maybe a little bit leaner than this last time.
Okay. I like that. That's pretty cool. Talking about this reverse dieting for a little bit. I think a lot of folks, maybe I've heard of this, maybe they haven't. But I think the reverse dieting, I think a really great resource on this. Marcus, you've read the book, right? The reverse dieting guide with Lane, right? That one was a really good. Are you looking at you're looking at your book list over there? Let's check it.
And we got
It is a great guide.
We'll shamelessly plug this. We have the complete reverse
Oh, yeah.
dieting guide, and then I actually have this book too.
Yes, both books are great.
Amazing.
So that book, I remember reading it with a client. I was online coaching like 5 years ago, and I had dropped her 80 pounds, and I'd gotten her calories like to a good like amount, but I needed to get her back to like 2100 or something like that. And I remember reading the book. Maybe it was my interpretation wasn't the best of it, but I was like, hey, losing the weight was like the first part, but we need to get you back on like calories, like you need to bring you back on. And it's like, I don't necessarily remember the exact rule, but I was like, it took us this long to do it. We probably need half that time to like give you, the calories back. And like, we need to actually be more vigilant in terms of tracking everything and seeing your photos every few weeks, because we're going to up your calories like every 2-3 weeks when you're ready for it. And she's like, well, how long is that process going to be? Can I just get my calories up? And I was like, I mean, I guess you can, but I kind of like extrapolated. I was like, it's at least like a 3-month to 4-month process of like getting your calories back up. And she was like, seriously? I was like, well, you lost a lot of weight. Like you lost like 80 pounds. Like I can't just bring your calories back up without screwing this whole process. But I mean, we could try. It took a while. She gained a little bit of weight again, but it wasn't anything close to the 80. It was like a few pounds. Her calories were looking good, and we got her back to like 2100 calories. It was a process, though. I feel like the reverse diet's a lot harder, though, right, Astrid? Like in terms of like, we can get people down, bringing them back up is like a different story.
So the way that I see reverse dieting, and I think has changed over time. Before it was like very, very small increments to get to
That was how I was
a
doing
higher
it.
level.
That was
But
like
now,
5 years ago.
Yeah, but nowadays you should be just getting the client to their new maintenance level straight away.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
So obviously, their new maintenance calories are not the same as when they were 20 pounds, 25 pounds heavier. So
Yeah.
obviously, you're calculating their new estimated energy expenditure based on their current physique, their current body composition, exercise, physical activity, and that is going to give you a number that is likely going to be different to their initial total energy expenditure. It's probably going to be a difference of 600, 700 calories difference. So the reverse diet comes into a active strategy once they are in their new maintenance calories. Now you want to have a conversation with your client around, are you happy with this number how it is right now, or do you feel still very restricted? Because the reverse dieting from there to perhaps aiming to get to what the number was before they started dieting is that gap that you want to perhaps try to achieve. Okay, I was before 2,500 calories, now I'm 2,100 calories and maintenance calories. I really want to have more flexibility. How do I get there? And that process is pretty much like a lean bulk. It's just adding extra calories that are going to put you in a slight surplus to get to our next level. But in that in between, if you're training really hard and you're doing all the different things that you would do in a building phase, that's pretty much the same thing. It's just like a more conservative building phase, pretty much. So you could do small increments, but you're always keeping an eye on the weight fluctuation and on weight changes and whether overall the weight trend is tracking appropriately and it's not overshooting. If you're overshooting or the person got a little bit heavier than you were expecting, you hold off. You stay consistent. You don't make any changes. You don't decrease the calories or increase it. You keep them the same. And you see how the body adjusts next week. And you start making adjustments based on that response.
Yeah. And I think both ones have their purpose, even in today's day and age. You know, I think for someone that's more experienced like yourself, you're like, hell yeah, give me back to maintenance like sooner rather than later. But for someone that's like a newer client and you may have given them, you know, like your estimated like start point and your goal is to help like, you know, help their metabolism or find where their upper limit could actually be. You know, you kind of do it incrementally because they might be afraid to put more food on their plate, especially if they go through this phase where they're cleaning food up, right? And they're like, dude, I'm like stuffed. You're telling me to eat more. It's like, yeah, but you're eating probably better quality things because now you're having us look over your log and, you know, all these things. Like, I don't know, you may have cut out 600-700 calories because you're now actually bringing awareness to these things. So, I mean, I think both have their purpose. And then obviously, like you said, kind of monitoring things appropriately and not letting it get out of hand in a sense. Again, like some people will eat more food, they become a little more lazy. Other people eat more food and their NEAT increases like crazy. They start wanting to go for walks more and they actually have energy to do shit. So it's such a, I feel like it's a biofeedback mixed bag, you know, like you just, you never are going to know for certain. But I know for me, like Astrid, like I didn't get on stage, right? But I did go through a cut for, what, Seamus, what do you think? It was 16, 20 weeks, right? Last year?
Yeah, it was 20 weeks. Yeah, it was 20 weeks because you didn't start it until about 20 weeks out to your birthday. So.
Yeah, it was like basically February till June, mid-June. And coming out of it, you know, like it was like, yeah, like as long as I stay within like probably 5 or so pounds, like whatever the calories end up being, and I'm gonna like you just said, like those basic principles, I'm gonna stick to the protein. I'm going to make sure I get that in daily, but then, you know, fats and carbs, I'm less concerned. Shoot. I mean, last year was probably the most alcohol I've consumed, which was like all of like 3 days or 4 days. Like we had some like arrangements and it was probably like under 20 over the entire thing, but it was a heavy drinking summer for me. Shows you how lame I am as a father of two. But I mean, I'm learning a lot about myself too. It's like, all right, cool. Flipping the switch right now to like try to go back into like a phase with a slight surplus is really hard after living in, you know, in this kind of maintained kind of weight and body fat percentage to move that next step. And you kind of alluded to that too. Like the coach would tell you, hey, you're not eating enough. You got to get the shit in so you can start seeing that rate increase, you know, and the feedback is going that way. And I'm like this close to pulling the trigger. Just got to make a little more money so I can have someone just guide me through it a bit more because I want it, but I just don't want to do it alone, as weird as that sounds right now.
One thing that I didn't mention that I think is worth talking about is how hard it is mentally to see the scale go up when you always wanted the scale go down.
Yeah.
or seeing the changes that are happening in your body when you're gaining some body fat. You're no longer seeing that shredded physique, the lines in your abs, the lines in your legs. You're obviously looking or feeling a bit more chubby, a bit more fluffy overall, and that is mentally harder for women. Probably not
Yeah.
as much for men. It is.
It's
It's
definitely
just
It
hard.
could
like
be both.
process. Well, yeah, but I think for women, perhaps it's just a bit more of a shock
Yeah.
because
Yeah. I think
you
there's more of a social stigma behind women putting weight,
perhaps, yes,
you know? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's also true too, because like I think I know for me personally, I'm able to recalibrate my mind to like accept it faster because I'm like, well, I'm trying performance goals now, lifting more weight, I can run faster or something. And yeah, it might be easier for me to do that. And yeah, I
Than a
agree. I
woman.
think with women, it might be just a little bit more difficult to accept it a little bit more faster and, you know, handle
Well, it's
that.
social, and their wardrobes are really like this is something I've noticed in coaching a lot of women is like if the wardrobe starts to go the other direction, they don't like that. You know what I mean? Even though it might be necessary because they've depleted for a while. And again, they're like, yeah, you don't understand. It's like, no, I do as a man. I still understand. But, you know, granted, Seamus and I wear scrubs every day. So it's stretchy pants. So it's like a little easier to fit into that. But if they're into this new closet and they, you know, it's like going into summer and, you know, the biofeedback is really indicating that they need a little bit of a break. It's like, you know, it's hard. I mean, it's definitely harder too, like to almost, you know, relate to, you know, as a male, they're like, oh, what do you know? You're a dude, you know, it's easy for you to say. It's like, no, I do, you know, we do struggle with it in a similar kind of facet. But I think like you're saying, Astrid, is like, it definitely hits harder because it's like you're just saying, like society almost expects you once you've hit that, you got to sustain it now. And like, they feel that.
and add the extra part of being a coach or being a public figure where people are expecting you to perform at a level that you are proclaiming that you are. Like you are
Yeah.
a fitness coach, okay, you don't look like it. And like it's just really hard. And that was one of the things that took me to an eating disorder in the first place
Wow.
14, 15 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
It was that I was so well placed, well known in my nutrition, sports nutrition, and as a dietitian. I just couldn't not be fit or slim or look like I actually trained. So, in order for me to have that extra flexibility or allow me to gain some weight, that was not possible because
Yeah.
I was my best marketing and my best advertisement. Like, it's my body, it's my best presentation card. How can I not be concerned on how I look?
Yeah.
So I think that is a really important thing, and how the more the competition is and the more that the physique becomes such an ingrained part of being a coach, and how some people associate being super lean and super extremely fit as healthy, and then you don't know the behind the scenes of being extremely lean, like a stage weight. How unhealthy
Yeah.
can that be?
Yeah. It's extremely hard when, like you said, it's like a public image. Plus, it's directly correlated to like how much food you can put on the table and like how much money's in your bank account. It's like that just messes with you mentally so much. Like I know being a trainer, when I was a trainer like 10 years ago, if I got injured, because I was also wrestling in college, if I got injured, well, I couldn't show the moves, you know? I couldn't teach a group class correctly, or I couldn't do exercises. And it's just like, crap, there goes my paycheck.
Man, and to speak to that too, I mean, now more than ever, you know, like I had a hard time even shooting like some content when I was in that phase at like 230 pounds versus, you know, right now I was at 195. But even the 5 pound increase to like 200 to 202 was then affecting me. I was like, dude, like I'm 10% less than when I was like a year ago. And I'm having a hard time with this, like kind of like I had a friend who was like, hey, you got to shoot an ad, but you got to do it shirtless. And I was like, really? I got to subject myself to like this type of scrutiny from you? He's like, just trust me, it'll do better. And then I was like, I trusted you, but all it's really turned out is a lot of gay people like to follow me, which again, it was flattering. I guess the men like my physique, but that's not, it was interesting because I'm like, man, like you just said, it's like we're all in the same situation where if someone, they're probably looking at our exterior health as the metric, as the like what we can provide to them. But beyond that, with all of our education combined here, we know that like where true health exists is not that stage ready physique, and explaining that. And I think you do a great job of actually articulating that in your page over and over again. Like, hey, this is my journey. This is not where I live, right? This is part of what keeps me going and I have fun with this. And then, you're also then talking about, the importance of all those other things. And, that's what we've really used the podcast for, is to, continue to, if people are willing to lend their ear for an hour, sometimes 30 minutes, depending on what kind of episode we shoot, you're going to learn that you're going to do hard things. You're going to feel good with accomplishing them. But also, like, what in terms of health, the things that we're after to increase the quality of the year is just over the number, is making sure that all those things that the research is supporting is things that you're actually paying more attention to. The exterior result will continue to happen and improve if the interior maintains a level of health. Then you have the ability to see a great result from, dieting and, maybe getting yourself on stage. But, if you weren't in a healthy place to begin, it wouldn't probably be possible. If you had
No.
40 kg to lose to try to get on stage and that was your goal, you'd be like, pump the brakes. Like, that ain't gonna happen. Like, 88 pounds worth of weight, we got something else we got to fix first, for sure. And then you mentioning that you went, 13 kgs to do your first one. Like, what was your, if you don't mind me asking, what was your starting weight to that 13 kilograms made sense?
I was about 72 kilos and my stage weight was about 50, 57, 58.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it was not just about the weight. It was about becoming it is a whole thing.
Yeah.
It is becoming the person that's going to step on stage was so different to the person that I was when I started, even just from the way that I started looking after my physique, my overall, myself, my health, becoming more feminine, using and doing posing, wearing heels. I never wore heels before. Like, fuck, this is so new to me that I needed to become the person. Nails, like, I always had short nails. Like, this to me was a big change. I transformed into a new, different person that now looks more feminine and is more like holistically looking after my entire body, not just like as an autopilot, training, working, training, and eating. Like, I now like pay attention to other things that are part of my health that probably before I wouldn't pay attention to. So it's a journey that transforms you in so many ways, mentally, physically, and also like your resilience and you see yourself and the way you see different obstacles and how you start modifying the way you approach hunger, the way you approach scarcity, the way you approach abundance. So there's lots of different things that go beyond just getting on stage, which is why I loved the experience. It was like a love-hate relationship because it is hard and there are a lot of different things that are really, really tough, but there's so much growth throughout that process that made me I fell in love with this process just because it is just more than what you see on stage. There's a lot more going on, which is, to me, is like, it gave me more purpose. It gave me that drive to show up to the gym for something and to work towards something. And that was really nice to feel as well.
Yo, am I getting chills right now? Like, this is an inspiration. Like, I want to go to the gym. I love it. It's so true. Like, I think, because I've seen some bodybuilding shows and you go to like competitions and you're like, gosh, these people look like Adonis and Athena, freaking sculptures. But when you meet with the person, it's a lot of hard work you never saw, right? It's a lot of just grinding through tedious routines, mastering the basics, mentally defeating the version of you from yesterday. And that might mean breaking a new identity down every single day and just going through so much changes from your beliefs, your mindset, your behaviors, your habits, routines, maybe even the people you spend time with. Maybe, like, you truly have to change everything to get to this goal. And it's like a physique goal on stage, like we all talked about this whole episode. It's like the psychology, the behavior. It's a goal really pushes your life to actualize it. You might have to not necessarily add more things. You might just have to like subtract a lot of things that are holding you back too.
I agree. To me, it's this trifecta. And that's what I talk about in my book. You can't have the perfect diet and the perfect training, but mindset, if it's completely out of work or not aligned, you will get stuck at some point, or you probably won't progress. You have to have these three things aligned, the perfect trifecta, I call it: training, mindset, behaviors, and your nutrition. If that is an alignment and there is pretty much all three somehow synchronized, then is when you actually see progress to the next level. So you were always asking me at the beginning, what do you think, or what you see in your clients for them to go to the next level? Is this trifecta happening? Is the mindset, nutrition, and training giving you some signs that we are ready to go to the next level?
I use this a lot in whether it's with clients or in clinic with patients. Everything you do in life requires synergy of very simple things. But if one of those things, like you said, gets out of whack, there is no more synergy, and therefore the results fail to come to fruition. You know, if the mind is weak, the flesh will become weak. And then if the flesh becomes weak, then the nutrition is going to fail. And if you're not having that tether of all those things cohesively, it becomes very, very difficult. And that's where all of us hopefully step in to help people when one of them's going out of alignment. You know, that's why I literally do all my coaching calls as calls, and check-ins are calls, because I want to find what's misaligned. You know, I want to be the person doing that alignment and tune up on a weekly basis. And so many people come into the calls and they are, shit, Marcos is going to like be mad at me today. I did all this stuff bad. They already know the thing they need to fix and what's out of alignment, but they need to like speak it into existence as to like, I already thought about it. Here's what I know I need to be doing with you this week. And here's what I am going to do. It's like they almost have the solution ahead of time, but us being there just allows them to be ready, willing, and able to share that. And, we need alignment. We need synergy. We need that synchronicity. Like you said, Astrid, like whatever word you want to choose there, that like blends it all together is so crucial in long-term success for sure.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I think that was perfect end to this episode. And guys, thank you for listening, for this episode of The Macro Perspective. Astrid, we'll give you this time to kind of maybe see where people can work with you specifically, things you're excited about. You mentioned the book right at the end there. We'd love that you take this opportunity to kind of talk about those things as we close up.
Find me I was anti-diet dietitian, but I'm not anymore that. So I am going to be very available if you want to ask any questions at astrid.thefitdietitian. I am the most active in there. I've written a book that talks about the psychology of eating and how to master long-lasting results. And beyond that, I do one-on-one coaching if you struggle with emotional eating and you want to achieve your best physique, if you are kind of like in a vicious cycle of losing weight, gaining it back. I'm probably your girl. We can find out. But other than that, I share all the time amazing content that is just going to take you no BS, true information that just wants to get to you in a way that is easy, is simple, and it teaches you the basics to become a better version of yourself.
Beautiful. Well, you heard it from Astrid. We'll have her link down below in the comments. You can find her on Instagram. We'll put the book link there as well, so everybody can find everything right below. And that's why I'm pointing down. Again, thank you for your time. And until next time, folks, The Macro Perspective is out, and can't wait to see you for the next episode.